Some people have a hard time believing that. Henry Cejudo is not the first person to say that. We're going to dive a little deeper down that rabbit hole. We'll also talk about the etiquette or the art of tapping. Okay, that's a big thing. And if you train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a lot of people are afraid, especially professionals, kids. Hey, I'm going to get hurt. It's too rough. Don't match me up with that particular partner. They're going to hurt me. They're too rough. And we'll say, who deserves the blame when someone gets hurt in training? And what's a good mindset to have about tapping? Because I think it's one of the most important things, especially if you're just starting out jiu-jitsu, is to learn how to tap. And if you're the person, executing the move, the art of being considerate of your partners, etc. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's dive in now. I guess, Jordan, we'll put it on you. You're down there in the trenches, the 10th Planet system. How many you're coaching too? You're a brown belt in 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, which is awesome. How many of your students and the people you train with are women? What percentage, if you had to put a percentage on it, and what's that? What's the experience been like with you training with a lot of women?
What was the question? Me training with a lot of women?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what percentage of the students and that you train with, that you coach, are women? And you just tell us a little bit about that experience. Like, what comes to mind when you talk about, hey, training with women and girls? What comes to mind?
Yeah, so I teach at 10th Planet Las Vegas. I'm the assistant coach down there, and I also teach Legacy Martial Arts. And over at Legacy Martial Arts, I have a couple teenage girl students. I have one girl named Paige. I have another girl named Maddie. I have a couple other students, and they're really, really good. But for the most part, there's not a lot of girl students. Like, there's a couple at 10th Planet, and there's more than I've seen, actually, than I've ever seen in my other experience training at other gyms and stuff like that. But all the way coming up, like my first gym, there was no girls who trained jiu-jitsu. And then my next gym I was at, there was only 2 girls who trained jiu-jitsu. And then it wasn't until I came to 10th Planet until I seen like a constant attendance of girls training jiu-jitsu. So, and even still at 10th Planet, we have like a pretty large girl program, but that being said, it's still small for it being a program. You know what I mean? It's large for a girls program, but the girls programs are usually on the smaller side. But the sport is getting larger. Every single year, it is getting a lot larger, especially with the rise of women's MMA and stuff like that. A lot of girls are getting into the sport. A lot of girls are seeing it as a career and stuff like that. So you are seeing it a lot more on the rise right now.
Now, Noah, you're out there in New York. You're training with Renzo Gracie's Academy. I mean, a vaunted, just world-class academy, one of the best. And what do you see in the classes? What, if you had to estimate, what percentage of the students are women?
It can be, well, sometimes we'll have less than, none to 5 or 6 females.
In a class of how many?
60 to 70. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember when I was at the UFC, I worked at UFC for 5 years, and this is going back to the mid-2000s, and there were some shows we'd have, and then you would look around and you'd be like, wow, 40% or so of the audience is women. And then we just automatically thought, well, the women are coming with their husbands or their boyfriends, and then we realized, well, right, a lot of women are coming with other women, so what's up with that? And that was sort of the first, one of the wake-up calls for me, which is like, wait, women actually like this. I remember I covered sumo wrestling when I worked for the Las Vegas Review-Journal, the biggest newspaper here in Nevada. I covered that, and the sumo competition came here, an exhibition came to Mandalay Bay here, and most of the people in the stands were women. And I was like, wow, this is a sumo, but why? How are the women here? How they, these guys are sitting here and they're kind of like, half-naked wrestling, and why are women in that? And it was more like the ceremonial and the traditional aspects that are built around the sumo. That was my theory anyway. But we've certainly seen in jiu-jitsu just an explosion. And some of us, Jordan, I know you have, we've both trained with Tammy Musumeci, who's just phenomenal, the sister of Mikey Musumeci, and both straight A students, straight A college students, and just phenomenal jiu-jitsu. We've trained with Tammy many times. And I had the pleasure to travel to train with Michelle Nicolini, who really was one of the pioneers, one of the best expressions of jiu-jitsu going back in the early 2000s. She's just phenomenal, great technician. much better jiu-jitsu than I had, and I trained with her a lot, and I would just try not to use that much power. But it was a different, and I got a chance to change with Gabby Garcia too, who's pretty much won every crown you can in jiu-jitsu in Abu Dhabi. So I've certainly seen it. I've trained with Miesha Tate. I had a TEDx talk with Miesha Tate and my niece, Helen Molina, and I intentionally chose women because I thought, well, where we are as a society where, there's a lot more women empowerment and a lot of opportunities, leadership opportunities, etc., entrepreneurial for women. And I also thought just in the fight sports with Ronda Rousey and Miesha Tate and Holly Holm and now Amanda Nunes, and we're just seeing the women really get their due and get a lot of the opportunities. The wrestling programs around the country, if you guys have been paying attention to headlines, wrestling nationwide, they're starting programs left and right for women now, high school wrestling, and I think that's gonna even improve the level of MMA fighters that are coming out, and probably even jiu-jitsu, because you're going to have more women wrestling, and they're going to go to jiu-jitsu, and then they're going to go to MMA, so you're just going to see a much higher caliber of a female fighter.
I was actually going to touch base on that, Frank. I was actually going to say that I've noticed a lot more girls wrestling in high schools, and a lot more the rise of college wrestling and women as well. And just I've noticed a lot of girls in high school are wrestling a lot more. So I think that might be due to the rise of the UFC as well, but. Just like you were saying, I think women's wrestling rising is going to help the rise as well. But I'm having technical difficulties, so I'll be right back in here. I'm going to leave and rejoin.
All right, yeah, you don't see your video. He doesn't see his video. He's going to pop in, pop out.
Okay. Or you were going to wait. You were going to weigh in on that though.
Well, I wanted to ask, and this is something I don't know much about. And that has to do with the, I don't know if it's, there are different titles, Title 9, Title 11, these sections of Equal Opportunity Code, I believe.
In the NCAA.
Yeah, and so, hi there. Are you back? Do you see your video now?
I finally got my video, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I thought we were doing this only audio. I was so confused.
Yeah, because we wouldn't be able to see that haircut.
I was like, I guess we're doing this one different? We're doing this one no video?
No, they're always video. So,
could you see me that whole time?
Yes.
Man, I couldn't see anything. It was all black.
If that's just a connection issue. Frank, to your point, it seems like I would venture to say that, high schools, is it as much of a response to changes in intercollegiate or in collegiate funding of having equal and same, as opposed to just having open access for collegiate athletes, to be where you have a men's baseball team, a women's baseball team, or softball, etc. Where there's parity. Do you think that this is part of that is mostly a response to that requirement, or do you think this is just a general interest that has in the sport among girls and women?
Well, I don't actually know the answer, right? That's a complicated question and is a national phenomenon. So to answer that factually, I don't know, but I'll give my best guess, which is no, it's not a result of, hey, let's just have more female athletes so we can balance our sheets and meet these legal Title IX requirements or whatever legal requirements for equality in athletics. I think that's a noble goal, but I don't think that's what's driving it. I think what's driving it is people are just seeing with their eyes in the trenches, like, hey, there's more and more and more women, and there's wrestlers, and then their sisters are wrestling, and their sisters are tough, and you have people like Helen Maroulis, who won an Olympic gold medal, and who's really attractive and out there on social media. You have Miesha Tate with her who wrestled in high school, who has 2 million plus followers on Twitter and Instagram, and I think people just realize, hey, and everything that's going on with the UFC, it's like, wait, there's a lot of girls that can wrestle. And if you're a wrestling coach, right, and if your whole career you've coached only men, right? I coached a female high school athlete years ago, and I coached, of course, I've coached women in jiu-jitsu. And if you're a really good coach, you just want athletes that are coachable, that want to work hard, that love the sport. You really don't care. So I think those coaches have always been like that. I just think that the hard thing was that for forever and ever, if you were a woman, you had to go train with only men or only teenage boys who were stronger and who had testosterone. And so that intimidated a lot of girls and women who might have been interested. But now
Yeah.
you can go to a sport and yeah, you can still train with guys and or men, but now you can train 60, 70, 80% of your training with other women or other girls. And I think that that's a lot more appealing to women. You don't want these big guys who are 100 pounds heavier than them sweating all over them. And yeah, the more advanced belts won't hurt them, but there's a lot of jerks that are mid-level and at the bottom that are like, I'm not losing to any girl, and they have big egos and they use way too much power. So women and girls have had to deal with that in the fight sports forever and ever and ever. And it just weed a lot of them out who might have wanted to keep training. They might not have been all-stars, but they wanted to train, but they were intimidated. It wasn't a good atmosphere for them. They got hurt. Now I think that since we're seeing the explosion of UFC, jiu-jitsu, judo, wrestling, a lot of the coaches too are like, hey, I want the best athletes. I want to coach the people who want to be here, and I don't care if they're male or female. And also, it makes sense if you're a gym owner, not even at the wrestling program, but if you're a gym owner, it makes sense to be like, hey, financial sense. If I can have women in here too, and I can have women, that's more customers. And I think that people are also seeing that this is the thing, Noah. I think a lot of it too is that people walk into a jiu-jitsu school or an MMA school and they see women wrestling and what women are doing, and then I think it makes it like, wait, why don't we have a high school wrestling program for them? They're already wrestling in the jiu-jitsu school or in the martial arts school. They're already wrestling. Why are we excluding them? Why isn't there a place for them like girls wrestling, women wrestling, nationally? Why isn't there? Because they're wrestling in the jiu-jitsu schools now. They're wrestling in the MMA programs. So it's just sort of it's almost like the high schools are just catching up to what's already being done. So you guys can weigh in on that.
Yeah, well, I was going to jump in, just brief. It does seem like there is more of a glacial shift in attitude among American parents, where they have, I think, probably the attitudes, with the visibility of Ronda Rousey and Miesha Tate, and other female athletes, the other UFC athletes that are very popular and have been profoundly, their exposure, the decision by Dana White to relent and give in to allowing women fight in the UFC 20 years from now is probably going to be one of those symbolic major shifts. That decision alone probably has opened up combat sports for women all across the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It changed everything. Like I said, because when I first started training, there wasn't UFC didn't allow women to fight. In early like 2012, I think it was. UFC didn't even allow women to fight, or they just allowed women to fight. And I don't even think they did, honestly. I think when I first started training, they didn't allow women to fight, and then they might allow it later on that year or something, or the next year. But I remember when women first started fighting in the UFC, and then after that, that's when the rise of women coming into the gyms and actual women programs and like women wrestling, and that's when that started to rise more often. Is when UFC allowed women to start fighting. Because when Bellator was allowing them to fight, and there was like Gina Carano, and it was around, but it wasn't really mainstream. It wasn't like a household name. There wasn't Ronda Rouseys and stuff like that. It wasn't in the UFC. the mainstream people didn't know about it, and they didn't really think it was accepted for women. You know what I mean? They wanted girls to be girls. You know what I mean? They thought if a girl was a fighter, they would look like all manly, or like they'd have too much testosterone, and there was like a stigma to it. You know what I mean? And then once Ronda Rousey came around, Miesha Tate, and all these other like girls that were like girly girls that were also in the press, that were being followed around by the paparazzi, it kind of changed the stigma behind it and allowed a lot of girls to jump into it without people like judging them and stuff like that.
The stigma, yeah.
Exactly.
It's funny how these stigmas really hold back so much human potential in all places, and I give kudos to the fertility empire for them to give it a chance on something that may not have been commercially viable at the outset, and it may not even be commercially viable yet. But the social change that is occurring I think that's what Frank you wanted to emphasize that today, and I believe that that's important here to consider.
Yeah, I think you guys nailed it. With the UFC putting women in headliner fights and pay-per-view fights, and just sort of at the perfect time, right? The perfect storm of sort of female empowerment and girl power and all of this, and then the ultimate expression of female empowerment is like a woman that can beat up most men, right? Like that's like something that we really haven't seen that much, right? We've always known that women, if given the opportunities, could be great scientists and great this and great that, and run big companies and boardrooms, and we've always known that, and the opportunities weren't as widely available for various reasons. But this has sort of been a curveball on it. Like, no, wait, there's actually women walking the earth that'll beat up 90% of men, and that's a big game change. And you have a lot of young girls and teenagers out there who said, hey, when I grow up, I want to be Ronda Rousey or Miesha Tate or Amanda Nunes or even Helen Maroulis in wrestling. And that's a game changer. And I think that the wrestling programs and others are catching up to that and saying, hey, there's something here, and it makes sense financially. It makes sense in terms of the joy of coaching, right? You just have athletes. Because, you watch those women fight in UFC, man. I'll tell you what. They fight harder a lot of times than the men. They really do. Like, when you see two women, you hardly ever see a boring fight. If you get two dudes, everybody has to be brave to go in that cage. But I've seen guys one out. And I'm not knocking them because they're in the cage. I've seen guys one out, man. It's rare you see a woman one out, and it's rare you see two women in a boring fight. It's rare. They get down. It's almost like they feel like they have so much to prove because they are a girl. There's no back down. And the thing I want to say though too is that on a societal level, if you look, in America, we have a big bullying epidemic. We do, and you're worried about that even if you're a girl. And there's a link between, I think, how capable do you feel physically and your self-confidence. Okay, yes, it's important to have parents that love you and they raise you to be confident, but it helps when you know you can handle yourself physically, you can handle a situation. And that's true for females too. In the old days, it was just thought, hey, her brother will protect her or her dad will protect her or whatever.
Yeah.
Now, now the expectation is, hey, what if that girl, you go to a CrossFit gym, go and look what women are doing with pull-ups and dips and leg presses and, it's mind-blowing. Watch some of these women on the internet punch stuff, hit stuff, and how hard they hit. You got women hitting like men now.
I would
total game changer.
Just to highlight the importance of women training jiu-jitsu and starting young. Just Thursday, there was a gentleman with a criminal record, allegedly ran from the back of a plane. There was a short shuttle flight from D.C. to Newark. He ran from the back of the plane to the front of the plane and was attempting to enter the cockpit. And the aircraft was in the process of landing, or had landed. And he started beating on the female flight attendant who's up front, who intervened. And I would venture to say, if you're a flight attendant, why aren't you taking jiu-jitsu? This just highlights one example where,
Well, what was the result of that?
the young man, other guys on the flight leapt up and took the guy down. However, the young guy managed to injure 6 other police officers. He literally kicked or threw one police officer down the flight of stairs. This is one of those flights where you get off the plane by going down the stairs onto the runway, and that police officer is in the hospital with broken ribs. I would hate to have to do jiu-jitsu.
They were able to resolve it, get him under control. The plane landed safely and all that.
Well, the plane landed safely while the guy was loose.
Happy day.
While the guy was loose, the story's coming out that the other guys on the flight held him down, and then they went to release him to the police officers, and he started fighting. It's not clear, based on what I've read, what's out there. But you think about it, women, in various places of society, female police officers. They should be taking jiu-jitsu because
all police officers. And this is a story.
Well, let's go there. Let's go.
I was writing this story.
Let's go.
I don't think you guys are ready for this.
I want to hear it, Jordan.
I was writing this story 19 years ago when I was at the Salt Lake Tribune. I was writing the story. I got a lot of flack for it, saying, "Hey, they had shot and killed a guy," and I was like, basically the officers, I did the investigation on my end, and I was like, man, it just looks to me like 2 incompetent police officers who escalated the situation and shouldn't have been able to tackle the guy and handcuff him and take him in. Instead, winds up where they're so incompetent that the guy winds up dead. And so I literally went to look at different jiu-jitsu and combat training for law enforcement. I went to some of these seminars, and I wrote the story, and I got a lot of flack from it. That was 19 years ago. Now you got guys like here in Vegas, Chad Lyman, who's a black belt, he's a police officer, and John Gentile, and even Crescencio Lenda here, and they're like big advocates of, hey, you're a police officer, you owe it to yourself, you owe it to your teammates, you owe it to your community to be training, right?
At least be a purple belt, in my opinion.
I heard that in Brazil, you have to be at least, I haven't confirmed, it might be in Rio, or you would know this, Rio or Sao Paulo, we can confirm that futuristically, but I heard, this is going back years, all the police officers have to be blue belts. And I don't know if that's just for certain precincts, but this is going back years when I started training. They were like, no, you got to be at least a blue belt in Brazil to be a cop.
I believe in that. You should have to be at least a blue belt.
At least a blue belt. I'm arguing for purple just because there's so many blue belts out there now.
Yeah, you should have to be a real blue belt.
A real blue belt.
If you don't have good hands-on skills, right? We all know that verbal diffusement and verbal judo would be your number one thing for an officer, your experience and your ability to diffuse things and bring people under control and your mind jitsu. But at some point, if it goes hands-on, the weaker you are with your hands, right, with your hand-to-hand martial arts training, the quicker you have to escalate it and go to whatever, a baton,
start using your Batman belt.
Yeah. So the crappier you are hand-to-hand, the quicker you got to escalate the thing. Which is good for nobody.
That's true.
Exactly.
And I know that there's several YouTube channels and podcasts out there where there are actual police officers talking about this issue. So that's a known fact.
You could be pro police officer, which a lot of us are.
I am. Definitely.
And still, right. We thank God we have a police force that does a lot of the things that nobody. That's why I say to people when they criticize the police, I'm like, well, go sign up and be a cop. Go ahead, go down there, apply, and go through the process. It's not an easy job, right? A lot of times they're coming up on people. Yeah, they're coming up on people that are having their worst day or having a bad day. A lot of times the police officers are just thrust into really tough situations and highly emotionally charged situations. Yeah. But at the end of the day,
stressful.
If your verbal judo sucks and your hand-to-hand sucks, if I was a cop, I wouldn't want you backing me up. I would. That's just me.
That's it right there. For your partner's sake, train jiu-jitsu.
There you go. for the
For
person next to you, right?
civilians' sake,
For
train
oh,
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu.
so that's another topic. I opened up today's news, and what's the big thing in New York is the cash bail reform, which that has its own merits of looking at and discussing. But there's homeless. There's a story out today of a homeless person attacking a 23-year-old female in the early morning hours. Beats her and knocks her teeth out, and he'd just been released twice in the past short amount of time. All this is what's being reported, and it's another case of a female needing to train jits, maybe not be able to protect herself in that situation, but it's just horrible. It seems like the society has got we've got a lot cooking. We've got a lot cooking as far as violence
Well, what's
goes.
interesting with the women is that if you look at age 13 and under, you go to a wrestling practice or you go to a jiu-jitsu practice, it's amazing how well the girls do. And until the testosterone kicks in at around age 13, 14, 15, you see a lot of girls that dominate. Go to a kids jiu-jitsu tournament and watch how many 6 or 7 year old girls just blitz the boys, and these boys are crying because even at that age, the boys know I'm not supposed to lose to a girl. Even a 6 or 7 or 8 year old boy is like, I'm not supposed to lose to a girl. Like, you just got body slammed and arm barred by a 7 or 8 year old girl. Drop in on one of those tournaments. You've been to them, Jordan, where these girls are just dominating everybody, and it's hard on a little boy's ego. But then around 13, 14, 15, the manpower, a little bit of the manpower kicks in, testosterone kicks in, and you start to see a separation where the best boys will just hit another level. But dude, we're entering the twilight zone now. In these next decade, you're gonna see a ton. I mean, I predict this. There's gonna be tons of videos on the street where you're gonna see a woman kicking the crap out of some musclehead guy. Those are gonna become like some of the best performing videos.
I believe it.
In a fair fight,
for sure.
by the way.
Yeah.
In a fair fight. In a fair situation, like not 4 or 5 women beating up one guy, you're going to see they're multiplying as we speak. It's just totally changing what you punch like a girl or whatever. It's like, oh man, dude. I'm so motivated when I go to the gym. I see women I do these farmer's carries. The farmer carry where you put say 50 pounds in each arm and you walk as far as you can. And so at my gym, there's these long tours, and I usually do like 3 of those tours. I saw this woman there, probably 25, 30 years old, really strong, and she did 2 of the tours with the same amount of weight. And I was like, dude, Frank, you need to step it up. Or I'll be watching a woman do pull-ups, and I'm like, dude, she just did 10 pull-ups. I mean, I can't just get up there and do 10 pull-ups now, right? So I was like, it still messes with your ego. It does, but it actually makes you better because I'm like, oh man, I need to be doing more pull-ups. I need to be. I still have it. Even in yoga class, I still have some of that competitiveness, but it's a good thing because it makes you realize, wow, you can do more. You can step it up. And I think women are going to keep making jaws drop in that regard. We really have underestimated what they're capable of physically. And I think we're going to see that in the next 10, 20 years. Like, wow, we're going to see a lot of incredible stuff.
Yeah, I really think that's true, Frank. Back to shine some more light on my student Paige and Maddie. I think one's 13, one's 14, and these girls are just addicted to jiu-jitsu. They just want to train all the time, want to learn as much technique as they can. When new boys come in, it's all I don't even know if it's a good thing anymore. It's a good thing and a bad thing. New boys will come in, like a 15-year-old, 16-year-old. They'll be their first day trying jiu-jitsu, and then I'll be like, oh, yeah, you're going to roll with Paige and Maddie over here. And then they'll roll with Paige, and Paige will just take them down, strangle them, put them down face down with their belly down, and just choke them out, rear naked choke. Maddie will pull them into their guard, choke them with the triangle, do some rubber guard stuff I taught her, and these girls are just messing up the boys. So at the end of the class, the boys are just kind of standing there, with their head down, like, man, what just happened to me? And then sometimes they come back, and sometimes they don't. And a lot of times they don't. So like I said, I gotta figure out something to do with that because it's a good thing. It's funny to watch, but I need them to come back because they don't like getting beat up by the girls.
Well, I probably want to say, hey, for those of you who just showed up today, just want to let you know, jiu-jitsu works.
Yeah.
And you might tap, and what you should do is tap early and often so that you start to understand the process of learning. And tapping is a process of learning. You've got to tap. And you got to tap smart. Tap
That's what I
smart.
tell them. I've told them about the tapping too, but especially about that jiu-jitsu works. Especially in my middle kids class, because my middle kids class, I have a very different, wide variety of different ages and sizes. You know what I mean? I have a kid who's like 90 pounds, and I have a kid who's like 150 pounds. You know what I mean? I have fifth graders and I have eighth graders in that class. So sometimes the kids will come into that class like a seventh grader, and then they'll get tapped out by like the fifth grader who's been training for like 2 years. You know what I mean? And
I
then
have a
they'll just be
question.
super, super upset. And then I'll be like, guys, jujitsu works. You know what I mean? Like we're training a martial art that works. So if you get tapped by somebody who's smaller than you, that should be motivation for you to keep training because this sport is a sport that works. You know what I mean? The smaller person can beat the bigger person until the bigger person knows jujitsu. Then it's kind of even playing field again. What was your question?
Yeah, I have a question for you, and for you, Frank, as well. It's the same question, and that's something that I've been thinking about for the last few weeks. Uh, has been the there's a sense of trust that you have with your training partner that when you tap, they're going to stop, and they're going to respect that. As far as the beginner classes, Jordan, for the kids, are you giving explicit instructions for the one who has the submission? Do you explicitly tell them how to disengage or when to disengage, or maybe what? Tell me a little bit about that process, and that'll be the same question for you, Frank, for the adult classes in other training environments.
So this is what I tell my kids, Noah. This is also what I tell my adults when I'm teaching my adults and I'm teaching them leg locks because everybody's so afraid of leg locks. I apply the same principle to that. So when I'm teaching my kids submissions and they're rolling with somebody else who doesn't know jujitsu, I tell them, okay, guys, you guys have superpowers right now. You may not realize it, right? You guys ever seen Superman? I mean, not Superman, Spider-Man, excuse me. Right? With great power comes great responsibility.
Nice.
You guys have great power. So you have a great responsibility not to hurt your other training partners, right? You have a superpower, whether you realize it or not. You know this powerful art, you have the ability to hurt people's arms, right? Choke people out unconscious. So as soon as they tap, you need to let them go. And you can't explode into your submissions or you jank into them really fast because then people can get hurt, right? You have great power. These things work. The things I show you actually work. So if you do them how I show you, it's going to hurt somebody. So you have to do them slowly and controlled and let them go as soon as they tap. And so I always try and drill that into them, drill that into their little heads. You know what I mean? Brainwash them. With great power comes great responsibility. You guys have to know that this stuff works and have to understand that you have to be responsible for your actions. That's another thing I also tell them. They have to control themselves, right? You can't control the other person, but you can't control yourself. You can't control anything the other person's doing, but you can control yourself. So you have to make sure that you don't injure yourself and you don't injure your other training partners.
On that
What you
note,
want to
I
say on that?
know here at a major jiu-jitsu academy in Las Vegas, I know just talking with a friend a couple weeks ago, and he was telling me, yeah, they kicked so and so out of the gym. I think it was a purple belt. And he was just known for holding the submissions too long. Even in practice, they had suspended him for a month or two, and then he came back and he was just back to just cranking the submissions. And they told him, hey, you got to find somewhere else to train. And I think a lot of it it definitely starts with the instructor. When I teach a private lesson in jiu-jitsu, the most important thing you can teach someone day one is how to tap, how to properly tap. And the most important thing I would say is even people when they think they tap, they're not, a tap has to be, very emphatic, very like
Can't
almost
tap on the mat.
aggressive.
You have to tap on them.
A lot of people, right? A lot of people, especially when they're new, they're like kids, right? Kids are like weak
They
tappers.
slap
They're
on the
just kinda
mat like
right,
WWE.
like silent tappers, right? And it's like, well, you think, oh, he tapped, but well, let me see what you did. Oh, it's like, it's like a little, it's like, well, nobody knows what that is when they're cranking a submission. You can't feel that, right? A lot of times, so. You teach them to really again, it's kind of embarrassing, but if you're really going to tap, it's kind of embarrassing because it's like saying uncle in an exaggerated way, like uncle, stop.
Sometimes you got to verbally tap. You got to be like, tap.
And that's what I was going to say. If you have two higher level people
foot.
training, right, or something that's a real aggressive role, and someone's good at arm bars or heel hooks or something, a lot of times your best bet is the verbal tap because it's so much quicker to your ear, right? It's quicker to your ear than it is them feeling it because the person who is doing the submission, who's executing the submission, is distracted by their mind is focused on properly adjusting the submission. So their mind is not primarily on you feeling. So it's going to take them a little bit to take their mind off what they're doing and the adjustments they're making to let you go, right? And as you get more experience, you get better. But an arm bar done properly is quick and bam, you're going to a lot of tap. You got to tap. And people have to get used to not being embarrassed by that because some of the better people are embarrassed by the tap, and everybody in the gym, look, Jordan catches me in a heel hook right now. I have to go tap. Well, not only did I just get tapped, but now the whole gym knows it because everybody just looked over there, and I'm favoring my knee, and it's like for a lot of people, that's still in the real world. That is embarrassing for a lot of higher level people to have to yell, but that's just the way it is. You got to be ready to yell. You got to be ready to tap in an animated fashion. So for me, my top 3 rules that I always, when I went in to train, and I had these going back probably 12, 13 years ago. And I decided the first thing I wanted to dominate and get better today. That was my big thing is try to be dominant and get better in training. And number 2 one was don't get yourself hurt, Frank. Whatever that means. Be aware, don't get yourself hurt. Don't be stupid. Be aware if you got to tap. Don't get yourself hurt. Number 3 was don't hurt your training partners. Don't do something stupid because I wanted people to enjoy training with me. And I also knew, man, if I'm a jerk to them, maybe I get them today, maybe they get me tomorrow. Maybe they're, you want to do that? You want to play that game? You want to crank, huh? And then what about when it's Jordan's turn and he gets me and he crank? So it's karma. There is a karma to it where, but I think, again, for the instructors, you have to read the energy of the students and know the student and know who's a problem and try not to put them with certain people sometimes. A lot of times in the old days especially, the instructors were just like, well, rotate, find a new partner. They didn't care if you were with an animal. They didn't care. It was just like, rotate. Who cares?
A lot of the time they still don't.
Yeah. So now it's on the instructor to be like, look, this guy is an injury waiting to happen. He's okay if he trains with the really good people or certain people, but keep him away from blank, blank, and blank, and blank. And that is the instructor's job. And historically, the academies haven't done a great job of identifying that and stepping in on a preventive level and saying, listen, you got to just roll with people right now until I see something else in you that shows me that you can train with a girl who's 50 pounds lighter than you, or you can train with some of these younger belts. I'm sorry, we're going to have to just put you with this group for right now, and I want you to learn to relax. And until you can learn that, it's fine. We're going to have you over here with this group. And that's really what needs to be done. It is being done more and more, which is a positive trend.
Well, yeah, you brought up an issue or an area which is your third rule: don't hurt your partner, your training partner.
I did put myself above my partner. That is selfish, but I did do that.
Yeah, you got to. Don't hurt yourself. That's the number 1 rule. Then the number 2 rule is
I was the second commandment, not the third. You guys are the third commandment.
Wow. Yeah,
think about it. Even for me as a writer, right? I was a journalist and a writer, and so I'm writing with pens. So your fingers take a beating in the fight sports. I was so scared. I used to drive stick shift, and these fingers are my trade, with writing and typing, and wow. If someone's just stupid, right? And next thing you know, I can't work for 4 weeks or 5 weeks, or if I do, it's in a compromised fashion, or I have trouble driving home with a stick shift. Somebody does something stupid to my right hand, So it's just realizing that 99% of us do have a day job, right? And nothing sucks worse than you can't be able to train the sport you love, and you got to go to the doctor's office and pay X, Y, and Z and all the time there, and then all the worry. And then when you're at work, you should be focusing on work, but instead you're focusing on, oh, is my knee okay? What are the results of that exam? It just sucks. Once you go through that enough, you start realizing how important it is to, like, again, realize when you need to tap and swallow your pride, and also being aware of, hey, don't give that person a trip to the hospital too, because I'm gonna tell you one thing in jiu-jitsu and in the fight sports. I've yet to see the training partner who hurt another training partner and then paid for their ER bill or their surgery. I've never seen them.
This is
They don't
very
exist.
true.
Nobody's gonna pay your bill for your surgery, or the 4 weeks you miss, or the 8 weeks you miss, or the emotional misery, the worry you're going to go through. Is this going to heal? How long is it going to take to heal? Nobody's paying you for that. I'm sorry. And then they're going to keep training. Now you're sidelined from what you love. No, it's a big deal.
Yeah. That promotes another thought in my mind. I want to say, I know that I've come across as probably a little bit more sheepish whenever I come to my training partners, and the first thing I always ask them is, do you have any injuries that you're training with? And the second thing I used to ask is, and this more applies to those who I regularly train with, what are you working on today? That's for our live sparring sessions. If they're like, yeah, I'm going for the arm bar, so I'll say, okay, well, I will defend it. I'll defend it. I'll give you a hard time there.
What if they say, hey, no, I'm working on tapping you at least 5 times in the next 5 minutes?
I haven't had that, but I did have one Russian say, this is jiu-jitsu. You're supposed to get hurt. And he's like, he just gave me this, like, this is ridiculous. You're wasting my time. Let's just roll.
But then he would probably go drink vodka with you after hurting you.
Probably. Yeah, probably. But I don't think he'd be there to carry me up and down the stairs that I have to climb in the subways here in New York.
Stairs everywhere in New York.
Everywhere. So your knees take a beating up and down stairs. Especially for some of those 4th-floor walk-ups you got.
What do people in wheelchairs do, Noah? They're just fucked, man. They just can't do anything?
Well, they have to find an operating elevator for the subways. I assume that's what you're asking for.
Just like in general, there's so many stairs everywhere. And
Yeah,
a lot of ramps.
They have to.
So many elevators.
New York City's in a unique place that, it's quite built out for that issue, and that's been.
I didn't see too many people in wheelchairs. Come to think of it, though.
They're out there. Yeah, they're out there.
I'm sure they are.
Yeah, they're out there. And you want to live in a dormant building that has an elevator, so someone to hold the door, and you can roll right into the elevator, or live on the ground floor, which is always an option.
Yeah, if you're going to train jiu-jitsu, you probably don't want to drive a stick shift unless you're really good, like Andre Galvo good, or Marcelo Garcia good, or Renzo Gracie good. And maybe you want to be aware of how many stairs you have at the house and all that, or whatever, your apartment building. By the way, guys, I wanted to say that there was a guy here not too long ago that we have our first podcast fan. A guy who recognized me. He mentioned the podcast. He said he wants to be on the podcast. He trains jiu-jitsu, purple belt here. So apparently the word is growing around town. This guy literally was holding up traffic just to roll down his window and yell at me and get my attention. And then literally the person behind him, the motorist behind him, was like ready to pound on the horn. I know these things. I could sense it. That was coming. So word's getting around, man. People, we got 4, 5, 6 viewers, and we're gonna multiply.
Before you know it, there'll be 4, 5, 600.
Before you know it, every man will be a fan of the Everyman.
and maybe every woman, right?
Because I'm a fan of the whoa man. You know what I'm saying? The whoa,
Steadily
like
rising.
whoa apostrophe and then man. I just think of it like that when you whoa man. So whoa man is the everyman too.
Yeah. There's
Whoa, man, is that everyone too?
there's a
No, we're all about we're all God's children. Everybody under the sun. So it's everybody under the umbrella, right? We got room for everybody under the Everyman BJJ.
I just usually Jordan, you're wearing a rep shirt, and it looks like I'm taking that role today. I've got my Renzo Nose shirt. You typically have a T-shirt on that.
I'm wearing something. Look, I'm repping 10th Planet. High rollers.
Oh, okay, high rollers.
Yes, sir. Ooh.
Yeah, I have to keep. Oh yeah, I see. I have to keep up with you now with the T-shirt game.
But no, this thing with tapping is it's changing now. I mean, even with the UFC, if you're a fighter and you're training with people, you realize, I mean, if you get hurt in training, you don't get paid, right? You're not going to make it to that fight, and you're not going to make that payday, and then Dana White's not happy with you, or Sean Shelby, or the matchmakers, right? So you let a lot of people down. So the things are changing for the better, where in the old days, there was so much pressure on you if you didn't just train with every big guy and train with the rough guys. It's like you were soft or you were a wimp or whatever. And now, I mean, that's the one beautiful thing about being a black belt. Most places that I go here in Vegas, at least, I pick my roles. People say, "Oh, well, that's wimpy and that's weak, whatever." But I've been doing this a long time and I've had a lot of injuries, and I'm not trying to kid something stupid. Jordan knows that I pick who I'm going to train with. I do train with really good guys when I'm in that room. I mean, train with some really good ones. But I pick them. I'm not, and then every once in a while when I'm feeling frisky, if I'm in shape and I'm feeling frisky, I'll tell you, hey, you know what? That guy's a wild one. He's a little higher risk of injury, but there's something to me that wants to rev and wants to put my foot on the pedal and I can still handle a guy like that, right? And there's days like that. But by and large, I'm like, nah, why be stupid?
One day,
train with, I can still get dominated by some of the other guys I train with. I still get beat. But I know that they carry usually a lower risk. And that's important at this phase because it takes 3 or 4 times as long for an injury to heal now. It takes way longer for injuries to heal once you hit 40, 45.
At Renzo's, there was a noontime class I went to, and it was a gi class. And, be careful, Frank. Your backdrop. Your backdrop just changed.
You guys are supposed to be my backup. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
One day I'm there.
Saved on a live podcast.
One day I'm there at Renzo's, and it was a noontime class.
Hey, how come you guys didn't tell me?
No, as soon as I saw it, I told you. I got your back. I got your back.
I didn't hear you.
I got your back.
Bro, I almost got killed, man. What the hell?
No, as soon as I saw it, Frank, or Jordan sat there quiet. He's like,
I wasn't noticing
you were more
nothing.
concerned about ratings, Noah.
oh well.
You were more concerned about the ratings than my head, my cerebellum.
That's not true. That skill can take a lot.
See, just goes to show you got to always be ready. You're talking about what can happen on an airplane, and you got to always be ready. You never know
Where you're sitting outside.
Blinds are falling and trying to knock me out.
Well, over here.
This is the crazy thing, by the way. I want to say this, and I've been punched in the face quite a bit. Not as much as a UFC fighter or a boxer, but I've been punched in my face a lot, and I've never been knocked out. I came close. I've been knocked down once, then I got jumped and stomped in the head, but I've never. It would be crazy if something like that knocked me out. Never been knocked out, and then I'm freaking
on a live podcast. What?
Have you been put to sleep, Frank?
That would give us 1 million views though. That would have been, we could weigh that. Was it worth it? We'd have had 1 million views on that. Guy gets knocked out during live podcast.
It could happen.
My jiu-jitsu instincts kicked in. There was a guy, when I did a TEDx at UNR, University of Nevada Arena, there was a guy there that trained, I think he was a blue belt under Nato Tavares. And he did a TEDx too, and one time a bunch of us, the speakers, after the show, we were like gathered around, and he tried to sneak up on me. He was like 250-pound guy. He tried to sneak up on me like ninja style, and I caught him. I saw him, dude, and I was like, dude, you can't do that to me. My instincts were too good. Like he couldn't. He tried to sneak up on me, but he couldn't. So that's a skill you get when you get to black belt level. You get those eyes in the back of your head, and it happens. It's a real thing.
I believe it.
I just wanted to, interject here about you don't know who you roll with sometimes. I was at Renzo's on a noontime class, and there's like areas on the mat where there's like more. There's a concentration of upper level belts. Like all the black belts and brown belts are kind of congregated around one another, and they're rolling there. And then the further back you get in class, you'll have lower belts. And it's just how we line up and then start class. And then as time goes, it mix up. I'm over on one side of the class, and the blue basement's pretty large. From the other side, from there in the danger, the true danger part about area of the mats, I see this black belt waving me over, and I'm like, me? So I go over there, and I roll, and it's a big guy, and his ears are terrible looking, and dominates me, of course. And come to find out, I just roll with Jake Shields.
All right.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I roll with Jake Shields. That happened last year, but I don't. My facial recognition is not that good yet.
Yeah.
With these pro fighters, but
that's the thing. That's the thing that's freaking me out with women now. I've seen a lot of women train over the years, but I've never seen the cauliflower. Like now, I'm seeing women with really bad cauliflower. I hadn't really seen that before. Now we're seeing that. That's kind of.
I've never seen that.
Yeah, who did I see a couple weeks ago that had her hair up, and who was it? I mean, I talked with her a little bit, but it was like, wow, you got some serious cauliflower going on. I hadn't seen that in a woman, but I guess we're going to be seeing more of that too.
I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, that's going to be a thing.
Yeah, you're going to be able to pick them out of a crowd.
So this week is a pretty big fight week, isn't it?
Yes, tomorrow. Yeah. Well, Sunday is the start of the week. Huh? Is Sunday day one of a new week? Is that how it works?
Today's the first day. Yes.
Today is the first day of the week. That's interesting because a lot of us think of it as the last day of the week. Thank you, Noah. So you're an accountant. So Noah's an accountant, so he knows how these things start and stop.
Well, in Portuguese, Monday is second day of the week. Instead of Nunes, they say segunda-feira, second day. So they start their week out on Sundays. But they don't say primeira dia. They just say domingo.
But apparently, those of us in the United States, Sunday is day one.
Sunday's day one.
And that's interesting because, like, employers don't say, hey, they could have made it and said, hey, on Sunday, that's day one of your work week, and then Thursday would be day 5, and then Friday and Saturday would be the weekend, right?
Yeah, it gets all off, but
then because Sunday biblically is considered the rest day and the Sabbath day, that's the curveball of the whole thing.
That's the curveball.
So we do have quite a fight week upon us. You guys want to chime in on? And it's in Vegas, isn't it?
It's here in Vegas. You go to Whole Foods or something, you might see a Conor McGregor site. I know he hangs out at Greens and Proteins. My buddy Greg Jermolowicz is a black belt under, I think, the Carlson Gracie lineage here, and Craig's the guy who knows everybody, and he worked in the nightclub business. Now they got a great little health restaurant chain going here called Greens and Proteins. Probably going to be a national franchise. But anyway, Conor loves Greens and Proteins, so if you drop in there, you might have a chance to see him and snag a pick or something.
Now you're going to have people mobbing Greens and Proteins, which they're pretty good. I've eaten there before.
They're good. I like it.
And they do DoorDash. DoorDash is great with them.
Yeah. Yeah, he has some good grub there.
Something I
Apparently,
need to start
Connor approves.
doing.
It's Connor approved. He goes in there with his proper whiskey and proper 12, whatever it is. No, and so the
I
way
think
that I
that's not
see it, I
doing
mean,
so
I've said
well.
it before. I don't like the matchup for Donald Cerrone. Um, uh, it's not. I don't think it's going to come down to anybody's jiu-jitsu. If it gets to the ground for any prolonged period of time, obviously you would generally favor Cerrone. But I think Connor is hard. I watched the Khabib fight again. He is not easy to take down. Cerrone tries to take a lot of guys down just from the clinch, sort of like a regular standard clinch or even the Muay Thai clinch. He tries to take guys down from there, but I don't see that happening. A lot slower, bad head movement, bad foot movement. Um, Cerrone can be very effective with his punches, and of course he's got a pretty good head kick and he kicks a lot. He some good leg kicks. His wrestling is solid. It's gotten better. He's a slow starter, though. I don't like that. Connor, 19 of his 21 fights. Sorry, 19 of Connor's 21 wins are by KO or TKO in round 1 or 2. Quick starter. I don't think Cerrone will run. I think the bravado will kick in. And so I like Conor McGregor a lot in this matchup. And then we'll see who wins out of Ferguson Khabib. That's a really tough fight to pick. I mean, for some reason, I don't know. I just vacillate. Sometimes I lean Ferguson. This is definitely the most dangerous opponent for Khabib by far. This is the hardest matchup for him at 155. And he's going to be tested against Khabib. But, so again, if Ferguson beats Khabib, maybe that spoils Conor and Khabib if it comes to that again. I think Conor will fight better the next time against Khabib. I watched that again. I think he'll let his hands go more. I think he'll fight better. I think that second fight with Conor will be a little harder fight for Khabib. I probably still pick Khabib, but that's going to be a harder fight for him. But more importantly, Khabib's got to get past Ferguson, who is just a handful, and who matches. What are you going to do? I mean, you got to knock Tony Ferguson out. He's got a great chin. He's got great cardio. Khabib usually wears people down. It's going to be hard to wear him down, even if he puts Ferguson on his back. Ferguson's, pretty slick with some of his submissions. He's got some elbows from the bottom. I mean, he's a very crafty and dangerous fighter. So, but anyway, Conor and Cerrone. I don't like that. I think Conor knows it's a very, very favorable matchup for him too, and I think that's probably part of the appeal. I think he's fighting a big name. He likes the matchup a lot, and a win here over a big name gets him a decent payday, and puts him right up there. And I think Conor is probably hoping for Khabib to beat Ferguson. I don't. I like Conor a lot. I love watching him, but I would be surprised if he fights Tony Ferguson. I'd be surprised if he wants to fight Ferguson.
What do you think Cowboy's game plan is against Conor? Do you think he's going to try and strike with him, or do you think he's going to try and take him down?
Well, it's interesting because you watch the tape, and I'm just thinking the smartest thing he could do would be to try to get a body clinch and take Conor down. That's definitely the best thing to do, because even if you think this is the way MMA works, even if I think, look, I could say, hey, I'm a better striker than my opponent. But if it's like I'm a better by a little bit, but I know that on the ground I'm better than him by a whole lot, right? Well, it just makes sense to why would you play with fire? Take the fight where you've got the biggest advantage. That's smart fighting. You might hold your own standing, but I'm going to wait for my time. My time will come, and when I get the takedown, I'm going to go where I know I have a big advantage, and that just makes sense. So, if Donald could get a takedown, you have probably a big advantage. You being on top of Conor, and you have a big advantage probably. But if you stand with him, even if you're Donald, you think, okay, I'm Donald Cerrone, I'm better than him striking. Well, what percentage? Okay, 50-50? Okay, maybe there's a 50% chance I'm better than Conor. Maybe you can even give yourself a lot of credit. You know what? I think there's a 60% chance that I'm a better striker than Conor. Well, it's still 60-40. Okay, what's the percentage if you take Conor down? You on top of Conor, what do you think your advantage? I like my odds 90% to his 10. Well, it would be pretty smart if we could figure out a game plan for something like that, right? If we could do it. So even if, the best thing Cerrone would do would be to be a point scorer and sort of do some kicks and then, kind of run for the most part, be methodical, dance. I've seen him do that in a couple fights, actually, a little bit. But I suspect that the bravado. I suspect there'll be a lot of bravado in this fight. I think that the egos are gonna. It's one of those fights where the egos kind of kick in, and Cerrone's in there with a really big ego, and Cerrone actually has a really big ego himself. He's a guy who loves the devil stuff, and I think Cerrone's a daredevil. He likes to play with fire. He likes to ride bulls. He likes to do dirt bikes. He likes to jet ski. He likes to live on the edge, and I think he's going to want to live on the edge and say, you know what, Connor, I don't think you can do that to me. I think that
I
that's the
think
way
so
he's
too.
built. The bravado is going to kick in, and in his mind, he may say, "Yeah, 60% chance I beat Connor or whatever. I think I can get him." But I actually think, nah, if you stand with Connor, I like Connor probably by like 85-15 for you. I'd say that's my own kind of calculation.
That's exactly what I was going to say too. I think Cowboy's best bet is to try and close the distance and try and get some sort of clinch, try and get like a body lock, get his takedown, try and get on top and force his jiu-jitsu, force the fight on the floor. That's his. That's the best way I can see Cowboy winning that fight. But I don't think personally, I don't think Cowboy's going to do that. I think Cowboy's going to go out there and try and prove a point, try and prove that he can strike with Connor, try and prove that he's a better striker than Connor,
Yeah.
and I don't think it's going to go his way. I think he's
Wow.
going to.
Because at the end of the day, that's where Cerrone's bread has been buttered. It's been buttered in the stand-up. Even though he's
Yeah.
okay wrestling and he's got good jits, he really loves to butter his bread on the stand-up. And he's got a guy that's considered the best stand-up guy, and I think as a part of him, like, it ain't gonna work on me. I'll get you,
Yeah, I think so.
or
I
let's
think
live
his ego's
dangerously.
right there. Like, you're not
Yeah,
going to do that to me, Connor. I'm gonna
yeah,
get you. I'll set my head kick up on you.
yeah.
The
And
worst
he
thing that
knows.
can I was going to say
Yeah,
the worst thing that can happen is that this goes to judges.
5 rounder. I don't see that happening.
Yeah, that's not
I don't see it
happening.
happening. I don't see it. I mean, anything could happen. Nah, both of these guys. These are both finishers, man. These guys both love to finish fights. I think Cerrone's got almost 30 finishes. Uh, Connor's got 19 or 20. These guys go to finish, man, and I think they'll both be looking for the finish throughout the fight.
I haven't looked at the card yet. Are there any heavyweights on it?
You know, I haven't looked at it again. UFC has a fight almost every week, right? And people wonder why that is. It's very strategic of them. But no, I haven't looked at it top to bottom. The last card I was at here in Vegas though was phenomenal with Usman Covington and Nunes
That was a
against
good card.
the Jermaine. Yeah, that card was phenomenal. But I have not looked at this card top to bottom.
Jordan,
I do
have
know the I do know the odds are growing. That I think Donald was. I mean, I'm sorry, Connor was like a minus 215 favorite, and now he's like minus 300. So he's people were like, "Hey, is Connor lazy? Is he sitting around drinking proper 12? He's had a lot of legal problems. Does he want to fight? Did he make all this money and get lazy?" And that was sort of standing over him. And now people are seeing you're seeing more of him looking svelte, looking fit, and stories coming out of his camp where it's like, oh my God, Connor looks the best we've ever seen him look. And now the line is starting to move. I think the line will continue to move, and you'll see a lot more people load up on Connor.
I was going to ask Jordan, have you received any invites back out to the Performance Institute lately?
Yes, but not like what you would really think for.
Okay.
Um, I haven't been training my MMA over there, unfortunately, just because we haven't been going down there and training MMA. We've been doing it at Extreme Couture and at 10th Planet. But I just got invited by I don't even. Oh, yeah, it's not that big of a deal. It's not a big secret. But I just got invited by Julian Marquez to go down to the UFC and perform, not perform, record some techniques. He told me he wants me to go down to the Performance Institute, and he's gonna have like a nice camera. I'm gonna record some techniques so I can start dropping like Technique Tuesday videos on my Instagram. So
Very
he wants
cool.
me to go down there, and yeah, it'll get me into the PI and record some stuff for me. So
What's
I'll have
your
like a
Instagram?
nice background.
What's your
Jordan wears no gi.
Yeah. And Frank, what's
J O
your
R
what's
D A N.
Jordan? Where's no gi?
Yes.
Nogi. Frank, what's your Instagram?
Frank _Forza. Forza.
All right. Yeah,
By
and
the way, go ahead. Just for the sake of time, we did mention we were going to touch on Henry Cejudo and his comment about wrestling and wrestling practice being harder, being more difficult than MMA
For sure.
practices. So we probably should weigh in on that.
Then
And
MMA practices or jiu-jitsu practices?
no, than MMA practice.
Arguable, I think. Probably still wrestling. Intense wrestling practices are probably still way harder. Because I only went to a normal high school wrestling practices, and it was pretty hard. So
Right.
I imagine a collegiate D1 wrestling practice is probably harder than your average pro MMA practice.
Yeah, it could depend on the program, right? You might have some wrestling out there that's not a program that's not elite or something, and maybe
I
the practice isn't hard. But if you got like Henry Cejudo, who was an Olympic gold medalist, and just that it always amazes me when I see a 5-round fight in the UFC, and then you see the guys aren't even breathing, right? You see those fights where the guys can just like fight forever, and I'm like, what the heck? And they were scrambling everywhere, and they were punching each other, and they were hurt, and they're not even breathing that hard, right? And then you see, like, if you watch NCAA wrestling championships, and if you watch two guys in a close match, watch ESPN usually interviews the winner, the national champion, whenever they come off the mat. Watch how much that wrestler is sweating. Watch how pronounced his breathing is. It's amazing, and so it just shows you, like, if you get like Randy Couture. I remember Randy Couture in his prime when he was fighting. You didn't hardly ever saw Randy Couture tired, even when he was north of 40. I mean, maybe in the Brock Lesnar fight a little bit because Brock outweighed him by 70, 80 pounds. And then the other fight he fought, Mike Van something, and that guy was an elite wrestler too. And 9 minutes of that fight, they were wrestling a lot, and Couture, was a little bit winded. I mean, he wasn't dead, he wasn't gassed, but he was feeling the effects of a fast-paced match with a lot of grappling. So you get two guys that are very
wrestling's
close
hard,
in
man.
level, and you do that for minute after minute after minute. And the other thing about wrestling is, it's in the stand-up game or even MMA practices, a lot of times you can sneak rest in. You can take 10 seconds off. You can take 20 seconds and dance and sneak your breath in, right? And sneak a breath in. You can, if you're in jiu-jitsu and you're on top position sometimes, right? You can take a break sometimes, right? You can sneak in 10 or 15 seconds. You can be slow moving. You can be more methodical. In wrestling, because the stalling rules are so strict, it's boom, 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 boom. So you got to be pedal to the metal, which really, that's what really, makes it so grueling and so exhausting. And then in addition, you look at a lot of the CrossFit stuff and a lot of stuff that they're doing in MMA now, right? Some of the more difficult stuff and carrying, pulling sleds and all this crazy stuff and carrying a 100-pound boulder on you and climbing up, stairs. The wrestlers were doing this for decades. Everybody else has just started doing it now in the last 10 years. The wrestlers have been doing, hey, Jordan, you get on my back, and how about I do pull-ups? This is the stuff wrestlers have been doing, sit on my back and I'll do push-ups. Wrestlers have been doing this the crazy stuff, all the crazy CrossFit stuff and all the things that are really ruling that they have in football now and other sports. Like, dude, the wrestlers have been doing that forever. They're just nuts. They're like, let's just find the most difficult, grueling thing we can do and let's just do it. They don't even wait for it to be in a magazine or just like, nope, let's just Navy SEAL it. Let's just push it to the brink. It's a very wrestling mindset. So I think it's the mindset of wrestlers, which is just always, you work hard, I'll outwork you. It's just it's a mentality. They're just, even most MMA guys, even though there's some really good MMA fighters, but they don't have the mentality, a lot of them being the hardest worker in the room. The hardest worker thing is epidemic in wrestling, and you don't have lazy wrestlers. Wrestlers don't produce lazy people in life. It's impossible. If you have somebody who's a solid or a good wrestler or an elite wrestler, it is impossible that they're lazy. They're all hard workers. It is endemic. I've seen MMA fighters who didn't have the hardest work ethic. I've never seen elite ones, but there's still a hierarchy of hard work. All the wrestlers are hard workers. In MMA, we see people that are effective. We see people that are good. We see people that are great. We still see people who are, relatively speaking, lazy. It's like, they don't work as hard. All the wrestlers, man, work hard.
Was there a specific or a unique aspect for Cejudo's comment as far as the context? Was there a unique context he was saying that in? to give a little bit more background?
No, but he's not the first person to say that. I mean, I've been participating and covering the combat sports for 20 years or so, and it's been said many times over the years by Johnny Hendricks and others that wrestling practices are, and I still agree with it even today. I think you go to an elite wrestling program, I think those practices are harder than most MMA practices. And now again, that doesn't always mean that that's the smartest thing, because you talk to somebody like Gray Maynard, and it's like you talk about overtraining. You talk to someone like Forrest Griffin. You talk about a lot of overtraining. A lot of that wrestling mindset will get you overtrained, which is terrible in fight sports and which should shorten your career, and it can hurt your performances. So there's a point of diminishing returns where work, outwork everybody, and be blitzkrieg all the time is not smart. It can be very imbalanced, and it can be detrimental to your, peak performance. It hurts your performance. So there is a balance to be struck there. Sometimes just going hard all the time is not the most intelligent thing. And quite frankly, some of the stuff we've seen in the jiu-jitsu and in the fight sports, where guys were always kill or be killed and weren't worried about the partners, well, some of that might be a wrestling mindset too, which is just you don't talk about those things. You just get out there and dominate. You don't worry about those other things. You don't worry about, hey, can we go light today? And I'm going to help you get ready for your fight. That's not a wrestling thing. A wrestling thing is, no, we're both getting ready for a tournament. We're going to go hard. Maybe we'll drill. When we're done, we'll drill. But no, I'm not going to go easy on you. I'm not going to go light with you. You've got a tournament coming up. So do I.
I want to, me not having a wrestling background, I have more of a spreadsheet background. Nice, comfortable desk, laptop. And I'm north of 45. I would like to have some of that fire, to borrow some of that wrestler's fire. But I don't want, I want to get out of bed the next day and go train again. How can I adopt, or what can I take from that? Being everyman BJJ. How can every man be a wrestler?
Well, let me say one other thing, and Jordan, I'm sorry to hog the mic, but I want to say this since you made me think of this, Noah. So when I teach a technical stand-up, right? Stand-up, you get taken down, and the art of popping back up to your feet. When I teach a technical stand-up, I can show you, okay, you get taken down, use your ab muscles to sit up, post your arm, you're going to do this with your leg, and then you're going to pop up, okay? That's technically what you should do. Guess what? The most important part of the technical stand-up, of popping to your feet, is totally mental. It's total attitude. It's total attitude. It's how bad do you want to get up? You have to want to get up more than that guy wants to keep you down. He wants to keep you down bad. You have to want to get up 2 or 3 times more than he wants to hold you down. You have to be more determined to stand up, and it's an attitude. And the thing, you see people get taken down in fights. Look at Chuck Liddell in his prime. Chuck Liddell was hard in his prime before his chin went. And I know Chuck, and Chuck is a very nice guy, but Chuck used to be really, you'd take him down, boom, he'd pop to his feet, and it would dishearten and discourage wrestlers. They're like, oh my God, I just spent all that energy, and the guy just pops right up. Right? Robbie Lawler was like that too. So that's an attitude, man. That's an attitude. And so what you have to understand, the same thing with some of those double leg blasts you see, guys like Jordan Burroughs, you see some of those double leg blasts, like, dude, that starts, and there's a lot of technical precision of what you can do and where your head should be and your posture, but guess what? The first thing is an attitude. The first thing is just, don't hesitate, boom, see the opportunity, see, dude, monkey see, boom, go. And
yeah,
so,
but you're out of breath, everything's on fire inside, and I also say that part of that mental strength is probably not as strong. It's not as well developed. So you're thinking, there is a loop. There is a set mindset that you've got to overcome, or that you've got to start with, and that's, I've never been good at this. I've never been physical. This has always been a challenge for me. And being vulnerable. So how do you turn the battle?
There used to be a very famous Charles Atlas commercial. I might have mentioned it last time, but anyway, the guy, he's on the beach with his girlfriend. He gets sand kicked in his face, and then he goes and lifts weights and eats eggs and protein shakes and then goes back and beats the guy up and takes his girlfriend back, right? And so what's the point of that whole thing? Is there's got to be a spark. For Dan Gable, his sister got murdered.
Yes.
Right? For Tom Brady, he sat through the NFL draft and he turned the TV off and he's like, this is my dream to play there. I know I could be phenomenal and help a franchise and nobody wants me. Nobody believes in me. And so there's got to be something. The best ones have something that chases them. The best ones have something, it could be. And so it's usually, it doesn't have to be negative necessarily, but usually it is. It doesn't have to be. Some guys just hate losing. They, let's look at the Ravens yesterday. I'm a Baltimore Ravens fan. Ravens got thumped. Tennessee Titans bullied them, beat them at their own game, manhandled them, right? And the Ravens didn't show a lot of fire and grit in that game. It was a crazy game to watch. I'm like, what? Is this the same team? Well, you look at one second. What was I going to say? This card is pulled in front of me. I apologize. So Tennessee was coming in like, hey, Tennessee was like, dude, everybody thinks we suck. We're 10-point underdogs. These guys, all they talk about is how good the Ravens are, how great they are, how they're going to be the Super Bowl champs, whatever. And they just used it. They just seized on it. They wanted it. They wanted it more than the Ravens did. The Ravens probably have a better team. They didn't want it. They didn't have the hunger. You got to have something that stays with you where you hate losing. Like, now, after the game, the Titans mocked some of the Ravens, their players. They mocked them in the press conference. Now, what I think myself is when I was competing, I'm like, man, losing itself sucks, right? Losing would eat at you. But in addition, imagine that guy at the dinner table or with his friends or with his coaches sitting around talking about you. Man, he thought whatever, I got him. I just would always imagine that. And I was like, I cannot give him the satisfaction of like dancing on my carcass or, going on social media and saying something or talking smack or having bragging rights in the city. That's how I thought of it in my twisted mind. Like, and the fear of that, the fear of like, dude, I'm going to look like a fool. He's going to have bragging rights. He's going to be able to dance on my carcass. Like the Ravens, for instance, should remember what the Titans said after that at the press conference. Like, oh man, that should motivate them in the off season. And that's how a lot of elite ones are, man. There's some heartbreak. There's something that happened that sets that fire off where that mindset shifts. I saw it with Dominic Cruz. I saw it with Dustin Poirier. I saw a shift where, Dominic Cruz, and I'd start interviewing him later in his WEC days. It was like he became a different guy. After he lost to Uriah Faber. After Uriah Faber tapped him like a minute and a half in their first fight. And Cruz was just so embarrassed. You could just tell. And he mentally went to another place after that.
So that's...
And Dustin, yeah.
I want to jump in here.
Usually it's going to be Usually it's going to be some heartbreak, some flaw you have, some embarrassment. Maybe your ego's too big in somewhere, and that's going to be the thing that makes you want to get that instinct.
Can I say something here about that? And because you use two different sources that are on one side of it, and I want to, and I in my mind the way I process it is on another side. And here's what I mean. You said to use fear, not for you, but to use fear or anger, okay? Fear and anger. But what I would say is I've looked at some of my own, defeats, when you've lost, when you lose something, when you've lost. And initially it might be fear. Initially it might be anger. But what you want to come back to is I care about myself. I accept myself where I'm at. I would recommend that in the later part of your career or once you retire. Wait, let me finish my thought. Let me finish my thought. I accept not that I am a loser, but I lost, or that I made a technical mistake, or that I haven't been training my cardio, or I accept where I am right now. I accept where I am, that I have lost. And now to turn that into where it will work for me, where I don't have to use the toxic energy of fear or of anger, but actually to say, I care about myself and I want this and I want to work at this and I want to compete against myself in a positive light. in a healthy way.
Let
Do
me
you
say
see that
this.
practice? Do you see that practice instead of that fear and that
Okay.
anger?
There's a spectrum of love and fear and hate, whatever you want to call it. There's a spectrum.
Yes.
If you don't pull from some negative energy, I don't recommend you try to be elite in the fight sport. I'm not saying you have to be all negative energy, but if you don't pull from a lot of that, go do something else, man.
You think that you have to have a negative energy?
No, you better have some of it. You're going to have some of it. I didn't say it's going to exclusively, because there's a spectrum. You can be it's just like a personality. A guy can be a nice guy and lovable, but if you take something from him, dude, he'll be. There's mobsters that are fair and they're honest, they're nice and they're warm and they're generous. Al Capone fed the freaking people in bread lines in Chicago. He's like, I'm generous.
Yeah, I don't think you have to have that. Now let me
show me who didn't have it.
When I'm thinking about
give me the example of the guy who doesn't have it.
I'll give you.
You could say Demetrius Johnson is about the only guy you might say, but even watch him when he loves to win, man. He puts the work in. He loves to win, and he's got a guy behind him, Matt Hume. His thing is he's just so coachable. With Matt Hume just saying do this, do this, do this, do this, and he does it. But Demetrius might be the only one. I mean, everybody, they all have. Like Monty Cox said to me many years ago when he was right, he said, Frank, they all have a screw loose somewhere. And they do. You got to have something maniacal going on in you at some point to sign up for that.
If I ever come across George St. Pierre in the locker room at Henzo's, because he doesn't.
He had plenty of screws loose. I like George. George had plenty of screws loose. He did.
But I'm also thinking of this in a broader context of.
By aliens?
Huh?
I said I was abducted by aliens. Like George St. Pierre. George St. Pierre.
Oh. I'm thinking.
I like George.
I'm thinking this in a broader context. Military service. There is a natural visceral reaction to someone trying to harm you, and there's plenty of energy there you can dig into of like self-preservation.
Noah, you wouldn't have great successful entrepreneurs. You wouldn't have great fighters. You wouldn't have great football players. You got to pull from some. I'm not saying exclusively negative.
I hear you. Yeah, you made that point. I got you there.
Listen, fear of loss is a great motivator, including in business and negotiations. It's a huge thing. Fear of loss, if you talk to entrepreneurs, it's the same with elite athletes. Fear of loss is a huge motivator. I don't mean the loss as in losing today. I mean losing things you're going to lose in life, moments you're going to lose, opportunities you're going to lose, your competition getting too far ahead of you if you're an entrepreneur. Fear of loss. If you took away the glory of fight sports, not just the money, if you took away the glory, a lot of people wouldn't do it. People want to do what not everyone else is doing. People want to, a lot of the elite ones, they want to do what everyone else isn't doing. If first place doesn't matter, then why do we even have an Olympic gold medal, or why do we have a UFC belt? If it doesn't matter, and if nobody cares about it, then why do we even have it? We could just have the fights.
Right, and then they can just split the money in half, right?
Yeah, we could just have ties. Why does anybody ever cry after a loss? Why is anybody ever mad on social media after a loss?
Yeah.
Because it sucks. The truth is it sucks. Let me tell you what's fun. Winning is fun. Whatever. Winning is fun, man. Winning is a lot more fun. It really is. I say that to kids. I'm like, I don't like jiu-jitsu. I don't like this. And some of them could be good. You're like, you know what? Let's get you to start winning. You see a kid with talent. I don't like it. Dude, when you start winning a lot, you'll like it. That's what's fun. Winning is fun.
Winning is fun. And for all those intangibles.
Let me make one final point.
Yes.
I'm not saying pull exclusively for negative, because pulling exclusively from negative is a way to wind up in prison or wind up being miserable.
Yes.
I'm not recommending that. People should work through that, and they should work toward a balance of positive and negative energy and channeling their energy. So I'm not saying that that's a way to live your life. At this point in my life, I'm big into love and detoxifying and all that stuff and getting rid of negative energy and negative self-talk. I'm a huge fan of that. But I think there are levels, and you have to work up to that. I think if wherever you are today, if you have toxic or negative energy in you, if you don't learn to channel and use that, you're wasting energy. It's tremendous energy. You just have to learn to channel it in a productive way that doesn't wind up in jail or depressed or an alcoholic or a drug addict. But you don't throw that energy away. You learn to use it, like Tom Brady used it. Like Lamar Jackson used it until they got upset yesterday. Like some of the big underdogs in sports use it. Oh, we're the underdog. You don't have to talk too much. You don't have to be toxic. You don't have to talk bad about people. I'm not suggesting you have to be mean to people, but you have to put a little
Or
chip
mean
on
to
your shoulder,
yourself.
be a little angry.
Or mean to yourself. That.
Do
There's.
you know some of the hardest workers are angry and have anger deep down in them? No, some of the hardest workers in sport are deep down angry.
Oh yeah.
Some of them are the hardest workers. They use it as fuel.
Yes.
Some of the
Yeah.
people
Using anger as
that have
fuel.
big egos. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
People that they're worried about other people doubting them and they want to prove other people wrong. You could say, well, that's not coming from a noble place. I'm not saying that that's the highest ground, Noah. It's not. But I'm just saying you can go very far being like, I'm going to prove them wrong. I'm going to prove my dad wrong. I'm going to prove my mom wrong. I'm going to prove those owners wrong. Tons of people have been smashingly successful just proving people wrong. It can be fantastic fuel. I'm not saying it's the highest ground. I'm not saying you need to stay there, but I'm saying you can get a lot of mileage out of that. And I've seen a ton of people get great mileage out of that.
But it's kind of a black magic.
What do you want to do? Take all the tigers and lions out of the jungle?
No. Oh well, no.
We'll have only guppies. You can't have only guppies.
You can't be harmless either. You can't be harmless. There's a little bit of. I wanted to take that to a point actually, and to release this dialogue of saying, because there's a mindset out there that there's absolutely no aggression, and where we're just literally ripping the claws out of every sport, and there's a good thing to have that aggression, to have that on point, and to be and it's okay to be disappointed in yourself, but just don't stay there.
I'm not saying it's the highest ground. I'm not saying it's Zen. I'm not saying it's heaven, but it may be the road there. It may be, look at someone.
There's
like
a spark.
Musashi. Why is Musashi, the samurai code in Musashi, why is that attractive? Because, Musashi basically gets to the end and he reflects on all the battles of being a samurai and everything. He says, I take no glory and no pride and delight in all the people that we hurt or that we kill. And that's a real enlightenment. So I understand that, like, being cooperative instead of competitive, that can be beautiful. Being loving, being positive, it has its place. But you have to deal with right where you are now. If you have a lot of anger in you, we can't just flip a switch and say, be positive, be positive, positive. No,
right.
You know what? It ain't going to leave you today, buddy. We got to learn to channel that damn thing.
And that's when you got to say, start with where you're at.
Right. We'll change the self-talk over time, but it might take you 3, 4, 5, 10 years to get that balance to where you got that negative under control. But in the meantime, let's give you some place to direct and aim it. And say, what? Let's take that negativity and let's turn it into a positive. That's what Gus D'Amato did with Mike Tyson for a while, right? As long as Gus D'Amato was alive, he saw an animal. He's like, God, Mike Tyson's just this kid would be in prison. But instead, I'm going to teach him the peekaboo style and the footwork and these coming up with these explosive hooks, and he made him a heavyweight champ. Now, when Gus D'Amato died, Tyson didn't have the mentoring, he didn't have the love in his life, and he went off the tracks. But for a little bit, Gus D'Amato was able to sculpt that and take that negativity and turn it in, oh my God, the whole world had to watch, right? So for a 2.5, 3 year period, it was like somebody was able to harness it to where it was like, oh my goodness, this is incredible, And Tyson wasn't getting in trouble outside of boxing at that time. Gus D'Amato dies, and then the whole narrative changes. But my point is, it can be done to where you channel it. And Conor, by the way, we're talking about Conor. Conor right now is fighting that. I can see it. He's fighting that in his own real life. Like, how do you find that balance?
There's a narrative there of this.
Where you don't go off the tracks.
Yes.
You will go off the tracks if the negative and it goes to your head too much.
Yes.
You will go off the tracks, and your life will go off the tracks with it. I'm not refuting that.
Jordan, you missed a bit there, but I know you probably had a technical issue with your Wi-Fi.
No, my phone died. I don't know what happened, man. I can't see my little bar up in the corner.
Okay.
And it told me that I had 10% left. That's why I came back into this room and I wasn't in the other room. And I plugged my phone into the charger and I thought it was charging, but apparently it wasn't charging.
Jordan,
my phone died.
all I can say is we missed you, and we talked about how much we missed you.
I appreciate that, guys. That's
Now, by
very
the way,
nice
though,
of you.
guys, I hate to rain on this. I got to run really quick, but I tell you, it's been a blast. I've enjoyed the conversation,
Today was a good day.
and I think this is
Good
proof that
conversation.
we're going to have some really interesting conversations and settle in and find a good groove. So happy to be teamed up with you guys.
I enjoyed the conversation we had today. It's good. All right, I'm going to take us down. Last words.
You know, you guys are awesome. Let's make 2020 a great year. That's it. That's all I got to say. Let's keep the momentum going. 2020.
That sounds good to me.
Got it. All right. Until next week.
All right, gentlemen.
1:30 East, 1:30 Pacific, and what? No, did I get that right? Yeah, 1:30 Pacific, 4:30 Eastern. We'll pop back in. Talk to you guys later.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye,
All right, guys. Have a good day. Later.